Ethan Vance stood by the towering windows of his mansion, gazing out over the city skyline, its lights flickering like stars he couldn't quite reach. The glass of aged scotch in his hand remained untouched, its amber glow catching the light but offering no comfort. His mansion, though filled with priceless art and the latest technology, felt like a museum, silent, cold, and utterly lifeless. Trust. A word he no longer believed in. Years of betrayal had hardened him. Business partners who smiled to his face and plotted behind his back. A brother who stole millions and vanished. Even the woman he once imagined a future with had walked away when the money got tight, before the empire was rebuilt stronger than ever. Now, Ethan Vance was a self-made billionaire again, but one who lived like a ghost in a castle built of ice. He turned from the window and stared at the large metal safe embedded into the wall behind a framed painting. With a few swift turns of the dial, it opened with a soft click. Inside were thick stacks of $100 bills, a velvet pouch of heirloom diamonds, and a sealed envelope marked, "For who proves true." He left it all as it was, unguarded and obvious. Today, his new maid, Lucia, would be cleaning this room for the first time. She had only been with him for 2 weeks. Hired through an agency, she spoke little, worked hard, and kept to herself. But Ethan had noticed something different about her, something quiet and cautious, almost too careful. And in his world, caution always meant secrets. He pressed a button on a nearby console. The hidden camera above the bookshelf flickered to life, feeding live footage to the screen in the wall. He glanced at the monitor, then stepped out of the room without closing the safe. In the hallway, his face was unreadable. "This is not cruelty," he muttered to himself. "It's protection. If she takes even $1, at least I'll know now." Downstairs, the robotic hum of the vacuum cleaner whirred through the marble foyer. Ethan walked past his staff without a word and retreated to his private study, where he watched the security feed in silence. Time ticked. A part of him hoped Lucia would pass the test. Another part, a darker part, almost expected her to fail. Everyone else had. His jaw clenched as he saw her enter the room on the screen. She looked around cautiously, as if sensing something unusual. Then her eyes landed on the safe. She froze. Ethan leaned forward, heart suddenly beating faster, not with fear, but with something much rarer for him. Hope. Lucia stepped quietly into the CEO's study, the faint scent of polished oak and aged leather lingering in the air. The room felt like something out of an old painting, immaculate, grand, and untouched by time. She always cleaned it last, partially because it was so pristine and partially because it intimidated her. Today, however, something felt off. As she moved toward the bookshelf with her dusting cloth, her eyes caught a glint of metal. She froze. The safe behind the painting was open. Wide open. Lucia's breath hitched. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a drum. The contents of the safe gleamed under the soft office lighting, neatly stacked cash, small velvet boxes, and an envelope that looked oddly out of place, sitting like an invitation. Her hand trembled slightly as she stepped closer, compelled not by temptation but concern. She wasn't supposed to be seeing this. No one was. The safe door was slightly ajar, like someone had walked away mid-task, or left it open on purpose. She quickly scanned the room, was someone watching her? But it was empty. Silent. Lucia took a step back, gripping her cloth tightly. Her mind flashed back to her childhood in the village, her mother's voice stern but loving, "You may have nothing, my child, but your honesty is everything." That voice always guided her, especially now, in this foreign mansion with strangers and cameras. She approached the desk, opened the top drawer, and found a small notepad. She scribbled carefully, pressing hard with the pen. "Sir, I found the safe open. I didn't touch anything. Please check." She signed it simply, Lucia. She placed the note at the edge of the desk, exactly where it would be seen. Then, with a soft exhale, she gently closed the safe door until it clicked shut. She didn't know the combination, but she didn't try to figure it out. She didn't even linger. Instead, she returned to her cleaning, dusting the corners, wiping down the desk, and avoiding even glancing back at the safe again. Somewhere in the mansion, Ethan watched. He hadn't blinked since she found the open door. At first, he saw hesitation in her eyes and felt the bitterness of confirmation rise in his chest. Another one. Just like the rest. But when she backed away, when she wrote the note, when she closed the safe with her own hand, everything inside him went still. She didn't even touch the desk drawers. Most people, when tempted, at least peeked. But not her. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes still fixed on the monitor, a strange warmth blooming in his chest. She had passed. No. More than that, she had done something no one else ever had. Lucia left the study quietly, as if the test had never happened. But Ethan would never forget what she did next. From that day on, Ethan Vance couldn't stop watching her. At first, it was through the security cameras. He told himself it was just caution, curiosity. But as the days passed, the cold, calculated CEO found himself rewinding footage not to inspect her work, but to observe her. The way Lucia moved through the house with quiet grace. How she handled the antique china with gentle, almost reverent hands. How she paused by the garden windows for just a few seconds each day, as if drawing strength from the sunlight. She was different. On a rainy Thursday morning, Ethan sat in his study, the camera feed open on his tablet, but his mind elsewhere. On the screen, Lucia knelt in the foyer, scrubbing the marble floor with a focus that felt unnecessary. His cleaning staff used machines for such tasks. She could have, too. But she didn't. She worked like someone who didn't take the job for granted. That same afternoon, he spotted her outside helping the aging gardener, Mr. Carroll. The man had worked for Ethan for over 20 years and now moved with stiff joints and slowed steps. Lucia didn't hesitate to kneel in the dirt beside him, hands muddy, face lit with a rare smile. She wasn't being paid to help him, yet there she was, trimming the rosebushes and lifting bags of soil like she'd done it all her life. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. That evening, curiosity pushed him further. He asked his assistant to quietly run a background check, not invasive, just enough to ease the ache of uncertainty. The results returned quickly. Lucia Delgado. 27. Immigrated legally 2 years ago. No criminal record. No debt. No scandals. She worked multiple jobs before this one, all spotless. And most telling, she sent nearly 70% of her paycheck each month to a bank account in a rural town in Mexico. The note on the transfer, for Emiliano's medicine. Ethan read the line twice. The next day, he stayed home longer than usual, pretending to work. As he walked past the hallway outside her room, he paused. Then he heard it. Soft sobs. Muffled. Painful. He stood frozen. Her door was closed, but her quiet cries carried through the wood like echoes from another world. He should have walked away, should have respected her privacy, but his hand hovered near the doorknob. He didn't knock. He didn't open the door. But he didn't walk away either. Her weeping wasn't loud or theatrical. It was the kind of cry that only came from someone who had no one to share it with. The sound settled deep into his bones, into that silent space in his chest where he thought nothing living remained. That night, as he sat alone with his untouched scotch and unread emails, Ethan played back the footage from the open safe once again. Her honesty, her hesitation, her courage to do the right thing when no one was watching, it played like a silent film he couldn't stop rewatching. And for the first time in years, Ethan wondered if maybe trust wasn't about never being hurt, but about finding someone worth risking the pain for. He looked out the window where the moonlight shimmered across the manicured lawn. And he made a quiet decision. Tomorrow, he would talk to her, not as a boss to a maid, but as a man who had just remembered what hope felt like. The next morning, Ethan Vance stood in the dining room, hands folded behind his back, heart unusually unsettled. He had faced boardrooms full of ruthless executives without flinching. Negotiated billion-dollar deals with steel in his voice. Yet today, as he waited for Lucia, there was a weight in his chest he couldn't shake. He heard her approaching before he saw her, the soft footsteps, the sound of a cleaning trolley rolling gently across the marble. "Lucia," he called, voice calm but firm. She stopped immediately at the doorway, eyes widening slightly. "Yes, sir. Come in. I'd like to speak with you." She entered slowly, wiping her hands on a cloth. Her expression was careful, unreadable, but Ethan noticed the subtle shift in her shoulders. She was bracing herself. He gestured to the chair across from him at the long dining table. "Please. Sit." She hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "No," he said, then paused. "But something could have been." Lucia's brow furrowed. Ethan exhaled. 2 weeks ago, I left my safe open. On purpose. Silence. "I wanted to test you," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "After all I've been through, trust isn't something I give freely. Especially not in my own home." Lucia didn't respond right away. She lowered her gaze, her fingers curling tightly in her lap. I thought it might have been a mistake," she whispered. "But a safe like that? I knew it wasn't my place." "You didn't just walk away," Ethan said. "You closed it. You left a note. Most wouldn't have done that." Lucia met his eyes then, soft brown eyes, full of quiet resilience. "I didn't do it to impress anyone," she said gently. "I just couldn't imagine taking something that didn't belong to me. Even if no one was watching." He studied her face, the calm truth in her voice. No excuses. No rehearsed answers. Just honesty. Ethan sat back, something in him easing. "Tell me about the money you send to Mexico." "Emiliano. Is that your brother?" Lucia stiffened. "You looked into me." "I had to be sure," he said, not apologizing. "But now I want to understand." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Then, slowly, she began. "Emiliano is 12. He was born with a heart defect. My parents died in an accident 3 years ago, and I've been taking care of him ever since. I came here to work, to save, to give him a chance. The surgery he needs is expensive, but I'm getting closer, little by little." Ethan listened without interrupting. Her words weren't dramatic. There was no begging, no theatrics. Just quiet conviction. "I don't want pity," she finished, voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to work with dignity." He nodded slowly. Then, without a word, he opened the drawer beside him and pulled out a check. He filled it in, signed it, and slid it across the table. Lucia looked down. Her eyes widened. It was more than enough, for the surgery, for the recovery, maybe even more. "Sir, I can't accept this." "You can," Ethan interrupted softly. "Because the moment you closed that safe, I knew I'd found someone I could finally trust again." Her lip trembled. She covered her mouth with her hand, holding back tears. Why would you do this for me?" Ethan offered the smallest of smiles. "Because I've built a fortress around my life for too long. And you reminded me what honesty looks like when it expects nothing in return." And in that moment, in the quiet echo of the grand dining room, something shifted between them. Not just trust. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. Something real. 3 weeks had passed since the envelope slid across the table, and everything began to change. Lucia was still in the mansion, still in her crisp uniform, still starting her mornings before the sun rose. But now, Her eyes held light instead of worry. Her walk, once cautious and quiet, had a gentle ease to it. And for the first time in years, Ethan Vance noticed that the walls of his home were no longer the only things warming up. It started with simple things. He began taking his morning coffee in the garden, the same place Lucia liked to tend the flowers before her shift. The first few days, they exchanged only nods. Then came polite smiles. Then quiet words. And then one morning, he brought a second cup. "For you," he said simply, holding it out. Lucia blinked. "Thank you, sir." "Ethan," he corrected. She hesitated, then smiled. "Thank you, Ethan." That small moment became a ritual. Each day, they sat together under the pergola as the garden bloomed around them, sipping coffee and speaking softly about anything but money or power. She told him about her village, about how she used to chase her little brother barefoot through mango groves, about how she dreamed of becoming a teacher one day. And he listened, truly listened, the way no one ever had time for in boardrooms. One afternoon, Ethan watched her teach Mr. Carroll how to use a smartphone. The old gardener laughed like a boy. Lucia's laughter followed, clear and light, and something unfamiliar stirred in Ethan's chest. It was peace. It was affection. Later that night, Ethan sat in his office, lights dimmed, holding a framed photo he hadn't looked at in years, one of him and his brother, before betrayal. He thought of all the people who had taken from him, lied to him, left when things grew hard. But not her. Lucia had been given a chance to take, and she hadn't. Instead, she gave him back something he didn't even realize he had lost: faith. When the call came from the hospital confirming that Emiliano's surgery had gone well and the boy was recovering beautifully, Lucia found Ethan in the hallway. Her hands trembled with joy. "He's going to be okay," she whispered. "They said he'll be strong enough to go to school soon." Ethan nodded, warmth blooming in his chest. "I'm glad." She stepped forward, paused, then surprised him by throwing her arms gently around him. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't move at first, then, slowly, he wrapped his arms around her, feeling her shoulders shake softly. It wasn't just gratitude in that hug, it was relief, safety, and something he had long forgotten: closeness. A few days later, Ethan did something unthinkable for his former self. He invited her to sit with him in the garden again, not as employer and employee, but simply as two people finding peace in the same place. They shared tea instead of coffee that morning, and talked of books and old dreams. Lucia told him how she used to write poems in Spanish. Ethan confessed he used to play the piano, badly. As the sun rose higher and birds fluttered in the hedges, a strange quietness settled between them. Not the awkward kind. The comfortable kind. The kind that grows between people who no longer need to pretend. Lucia sipped her tea, then glanced toward the house. "You don't lock the safe anymore," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "No need to." She looked at him, searching his face. "You trust me?" "With more than the safe," he said, meeting her eyes. "I trust you with this house. With my peace. With whatever's left of my heart." Lucia blushed, lowering her gaze, but the corners of her lips curled upward. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan wasn't thinking about mergers, or losses, or betrayal. He was thinking about gardens, and second chances, and the unexpected way a woman who came to clean his home, had somehow cleaned the sorrow out of his soul. In a world obsessed with taking, she had chosen honesty. And in return, he had found not just someone he could trust, but someone he might just learn to love.